How long is it going to take me to learn English? The short answer, I have no idea. Hello and welcome. Welcome to Input English. In this episode, we're going to tackle the common question I get asked, which is how long is it going to take to learn English? It is a reasonable question. People have need to know. People need to make plans. People need to set their expectations. It's entirely reasonable. It's just very difficult because there are so many determinants and there are so many differences among us. What I'd like to do today is share 6 concepts that you may find useful to better understand how you relate to this process. 2 of the concepts are philosophical questions. 2 are things that you have no control over, and 2 are things that you have complete control over. So let's analyze. The first philosophical question is, what's the hurry? What's the big hurry? Learning a language like English is a lifelong experience. It is not a very small project. It is huge, and it's a race with no finish line. There is no graduation from your studies in English. No one ever proclaims victory and that they have nothing else to learn. This is not unique to learning English. This is typical of many things, including learning to play the piano or the violin. These are projects that we take on in life, and they are never ending. The question of what's the hurry may help people put it in perspective. Maybe there is no hurry. I recognize that there are extrinsic forces upon us that might give one a sense of urgency. Perhaps you're already living in an English-speaking country. You need it now. Or perhaps you're going to travel to an English-speaking country and you need good language skills in 3 to 6 months. In both of those scenarios, the advice is the same. That is, continue using comprehensible input because it is arguably the best way to learn English. But under those circumstances, with extrinsic stresses applied to you, you might want to ramp up the concentration of your input. Also, if you have these external stresses upon you to use English sooner rather than later, you might want to avail yourself of some traveler's English phrases so that you can function better in stores, in society, and dealing with people. Those resources are available online, of course. The second philosophical question is whether your learning English is a destination or a journey. And I find it much more satisfying to consider it a journey because there is a lot to enjoy along the way. It's not just about the destination. Studying languages, I enjoy the sense of discovery, the sensation of the improvement of the language skills as they develop. This is very satisfying. And your satisfaction with English is going to help you continue on your journey. I would suggest that it is not just a destination. There are 2 things that you have no control over. 1, your starting point. Your starting point is whatever it is. Perhaps you studied English in school. Perhaps you studied it for several years. You may have a large vocabulary and you need to build from that. People on this channel watching these videos are not super beginners. Anyone watching this video has quite a bit of English because I don't make super beginner videos. You also can't control the demands put on you from outside. The level of competency in English needed to watch videos in English is very different compared to doing a job that has to be performed in English all the time. So you can't necessarily control the demands being placed upon you by your circumstances. You just have to adapt to them. There are two things you have complete control over. You can control the concentration of your comprehensible input routine. There is a very big difference between 30 minutes of comprehensible input per day versus 2 to 3 hours per day. The results of those two paths are completely different, and you are in control. If someone chooses a very leisurely approach to comprehensible input, say 30 minutes a day, I would be concerned that they would not be able to sense much progress. They would perhaps get frustrated with a lack of progress, and their frustration could lead them to quit. If someone chooses a very concentrated program, say 2 to 3 hours of comprehensible input per day, at that pace, they are more likely to be able to sense the progress, sense the discoveries, and enjoy the process much more. I would expect them to be less likely to get frustrated, less likely to perceive a plateau, and less likely to quit in frustration. The other determinant that you have complete control over is the efficiency of your comprehensible input. In order to be efficient, you want the input to be interesting and compelling so that it captures your imagination, it captures your concentration. Playing comprehensible input in the background while you do some other task like balance your checkbook or pay your bills, you're not going to learn much. That's very inefficient. If you choose input that is very interesting to you and you can keep your attention focused on the story, focused on the discussion, then that is going to be more efficient. When you choose your input, you're making a very important decision. In school, we are taught to struggle, strive, study, memorize, prepare for tests. And those behaviors that we learned in school are not useful to foster efficiency in the use of comprehensible input. So when you choose your input, you want to choose material that is relatively easy to understand. You want material that you understand the story or the conversation. You want material you know most of the words, not every word, but most of the words, so that the story comes in and brings the language with it. So of all these concerns, the two that you have great power over include the concentration of the program you design for yourself and the quality of the input you choose for yourself. And these make a huge difference on your overall experience and the efficiency of learning the English language. Now, I'd like to share with you some useful assumptions. I don't label these concepts as universal truth. This is just a collection of some useful concepts, and they may be useful to you on your journey. In the United States, A full-time job is typically described as 40 hours per week. That's usually 8 hours per day, 5 days a week. And if that person works 1 year, they work roughly 2,000 hours in 1 year. If you are coming to English from a European type language, French, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, German, and a few others, it would be reasonable to start with the basic assumption that 2,000 hours is what you are shooting for input. That could take many forms. That could be videos, that can be podcasts, that can be reading books, that could be watching television series, that could be watching very good, linguistically dense YouTube videos. You want a lot of language in your content, but 2,000 hours is a great basic assumption for what it's going to take you. Now, that does not take into account your starting point. So if you have studied English for years in school, then it's going to be less because you're starting at a higher level. If you are coming to English from a language that is very different than English, your language has little or no shared vocabulary, perhaps the alphabet is completely different, then I would assume that your journey is going to be 1.5 to 2 times longer. Now, I share this with you because these are the assumptions that were shared with me, and I found them very useful. With these basic assumptions, I would use them as long as they are useful to you. Really, this is a journey. You start out with a basic assumption, and then as you progress in your learning process, you can adjust your expectations based upon what you see. So that's the end of this episode. I hope you find these ideas useful. I encourage comments below, and I hope you join us in future videos. See you soon.